Hello everyone, I'm here with Floriske Neumann or Neumann?
Deutmann.
Deutmann, I don't know Dutch. And she is the chairwoman of the foundation who is running this conference. So first question, Floris, what's your background and why did you decide to organize this conference? Why do you think this is SMRs are an important topic to discuss nowadays?
Yeah, thank you, Luca, for the interview and for coming all the way to the Netherlands, to our conference. So my background is completely different. I studied sinology and international management. My line of work is also in that area, but since around 10 years, I really started to get an interest in the energy transition because I'm also worried about climate change and about mitigation. I want to really have a contribution to mitigate climate change. So then automatically I was looking at the different type of CO2-free energy sources. And then when you dive into nuclear, you see that actually it's one of the safest, most abundant CO2-free, forceful energy sources that we have. And then I thought I really want to do something. So first in my political party, Social Liberals in the Netherlands, I am a board member of the working group on energy and climate for that political party. And then afterwards I was asked first as a board member in the Dutch Foundation for Energy Transition and Nuclear Energy, the SEC. And then as of last year, I have become the chairman.
And so SMRs are a hot topic nowadays. There's a lot of discussion about them. There is a lot of optimism about them, but maybe sometimes I think there is too much optimism in the sense that right now we have like 127, if I counted correctly, SMRs and AMRs and MMR designs and developers. And well, even if the most optimistic scenario, I don't think there's market for all of them. Is there a bubble?
I think not so much a bubble, because in the end there is something genuinely below this. There is something, right? SMRs definitely can create energy. They can make sure they can play a role in our energy system. But you are right. At this moment there's far too many developments in that area. There will definitely be a big shakeout. I do want to make the distinction, actually I prefer to make the distinction between SMRs, the water-cooled SMRs. So they are just basically the type of a pressurized or boiling water reactor that we already have, but just in a modular, smaller way. So that's an innovation in the way of production. And then you have indeed the AMRs. So they are really new types of SMRs with different coolants, like sodium cooled or lead cooled or gas cooled, helium cooled. They are really, and they maybe need a longer time to develop. There's a lot of these around. So yeah, I think only a few of them in the end will really make it. So at this moment it's a gamble. Which one are you going to, if you want to invest, you have to either know a lot about it or believe in the people that are developing it. But there will be a big shakeout for sure.
I make the comparison with the dot-com bubble of '99. Sometimes like that was a bubble and there was a big shakeout, but actually the company that survived that bubble, the companies, they shaped the world of today. Nowadays we are all connected to the internet all the time.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned a very important topic, which is investing, financing. Because there are so many different models and there is some uncertainty, also public support right now seemingly is happening, but we are not sure yet. The governments are tiptoeing a little bit into the new nuclear. So how can we secure the financing for these technologies, this technology class, in order to be able to develop it and bring it on scale?
I think it's actually very simple. We need to have a level playing field between nuclear and the renewables. There was in the beginning, I remember the first offshore wind parks in the Netherlands. They were crazy expensive. It was really a market organization would never have done that alone. The government was needed for the initial investments and to really give the push to make it feasible, to make a return on investment possible, and to build this industry. That same role, I believe, the government should also take in the SMR world. So the government should be supporting. Yesterday, during the conference, we heard actually about X-Energy from the United States. They told us that the US government, they paid 50% of the development cost was paid by the government as initial investment. I believe that we need, maybe not 50, but we do need instruments from the European government to also have that same flying wheel, that same effect, so that you can really mature this sector.
One of the goals that SMRs were developed with was standardization. So we have like reactors that are factory built, come out from the factory, all components equal, we just assemble them and run them. Standardization, series production, and so on. However, if we have so many designs, this gets lost a little bit because all of a sudden we don't have a standardization anymore. Each design has its own components, each design has its own specifics, and so on. So, do you think this is going to be a problem eventually?
It might. Definitely, because indeed, so I do really like, and especially for the more traditional water-cooled reactors like GE and Rolls-Royce, what they have done, they just took a very simple PWR design, but they make it modular. So they make sure that the biggest elements which is usually the steam turbine, that make it that big so that it can be shipped on normal roads and normal. So I think that's a very nice concept, right? But indeed, there is different types of that all have their own needs. So yeah, I don't know yet how that. Let me give you the example of Siemens back in the 70s or 80s. So they had to choose between getting their supply chain ready for either the PWR or the high temperature. In the end, they choose for the PWR. So the high temperature reactor, the knowledge that they had built up, they sold it to South Africa, and from South Africa it went to China. And China now has a very well-developed high temperature reactor program, which is actually coming from Siemens from that time. They had to make the choice, and you will see that, I think, also in the SMR sector in Europe, that at a certain point you will have to make choices, and maybe some of the developers or some of the supply chain companies will make the right choice, and some maybe not. So yeah, that's difficult for me to foresee.
Capitalism, right? Like
yeah.
we have a competition and someone lose.
Yeah.
This is part of the game. Speaking of China, well, they're investing also in big reactors.
Yes.
and
And we
fast
should
reactors.
too.
We should too. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you very much for pointing this out. This is something I insist on, that we should not abandon large reactors. About this, I'm going to ask you a question about the Netherlands, since you are in politics. It says current plan for building new nuclear, albeit a bit slow maybe compared to other countries. I don't know, it seems like there is a lot of discussion still ongoing.
Yes.
Can you tell us where we are and what types of reactor are you Netherlands focusing on? SMRs, large reactors, or both?
Well, we are focusing on both. So the plan of the government is to build 2+2 reactors. That's the current policy. So at first there were 2 reactors planned, big reactors, and then the current government added 2. So it's now
2 large ones?
4 large ones in total. But I think the new government might shift away from the +2. But the 2 big reactors, they are now indeed, they are solidly in government policy. And they have selected 2 vendors, or 2 vendors are left. So that's Westinghouse and EDF. So it will either be an AP1000 or an EPR type of reactor. They are now, at this moment, are in the process that we are finding a right location. So it's the location selection, and based on that there will be specifications, and then the vendors can make their final offer, and then there will be a pick between the 2 vendors.
Okay, and what about SMRs?
And for SMRs, there is a separate program. So there's, in total, there are around 14 billion euros for the 14.5 billion, something like that, for the complete nuclear program. The majority of it will be for the large reactors, because most of that will be invested by the government, so it will be a state-owned enterprise. And for the SMR, there is 65 million available to help develop the SMRs, but it's also really looking at the market to develop the SMRs.
One last question. What do you think would be needed at a European level to facilitate the introduction of SMRs in the Union Netherlands? But as a
Yeah, I think several things. First of all, in the perspective from regulation, I think it would be so nice if there would be if all the regulators have the same standards, the same requirements, or at least if there is a framework, European, for example, if you develop a reactor in one country, of course it's site specific, but that the rules are not completely different from one country to another. That makes it very difficult to deploy in a big way. So I think there needs to be coordination between the regulators, also in terms of policy, and then of course you need investment programs. What I just said about the US program, it would be very good if you would have a similar type of program from the European government, so that the European government would select, or they would have a tender with a budget available, and then they would select certain types of SMR so that everybody can apply, and then they will select maybe 2 or 3, and they will be helped, they will be funded. I think that might be could work. So I think both from the financial perspective, regulation perspective, the European Union has a very big role to play in my view.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.